Hello and welcome back to Healthy Spouse, Healthy House. My name is Tony and my channel focuses on health, wellness, and relationships. I believe that there are 15 different areas of health that any one person can work on at any point in time in their lives. So, every first and third Friday, I invite you to join me as I introduce, define, and discuss each one of those areas of health. And then in the end, we make plans and we make goals so that we can become healthier in those areas. And I'm going to tell y'all what I tell my kids. Something that I live by is that it's not enough to know. You can have all the knowledge in the world, right? But it's knowing is only part of it, right? It's only the beginning. Now you have to put some action toward it. Now you have to be able to properly appropriate those things into your life and into your lifestyle. And that's how you gain wisdom, is how it's knowledge and then it's understanding and then it's putting those things in action and putting those things into practice in your life. And so that's why I am a stickler for making these plans and making these goals so that you could be intentional about living your life healthier, right? And this is for God's glory and this is for your good too. This is all of that. Okay, so anyway, today I interrupt our regularly scheduled programming because I know that we have been going in order. So normally I will introduce the area of health that we're going to be talking about, and then we go on this health kick to where sometimes it's weeks to a month or even more, where I am on a health kick. That means that I'm talking about one specific area of health for a long time, right? Some of them, that's how it is. I have a lot to say about some of these areas of health. And so, but today I wanted to talk about something else, other than that, other than going through our regular, thing that we do or whatever. I wanted to talk about something else. And that something else that I want to talk about is grief. Now, if you've heard my testimony, you know that I dealt with postpartum depression and anxiety. And those things pretty much catapulted me into this health journey to begin with. But y'all, I wanted to dig a little deeper because I wanted to understand like what even made me, experience anxiety and postpartum depression on the level that I was experiencing it on. I was like, what? And I was like, okay, I really need to understand what kind of made me, you know, uh, experience this stuff. And so that's when I started pulling back the layers and everything. And I was just like, I really need to know. I started praying about it and I was like, okay. And then it was like, once I had gotten to the center of it all, I was like, oh, it was grief. I was like, oh my goodness. Again, if you know my testimony, you know that before I went through this time of anxiety and depression on that level, that I had experienced the death of my grandmother, and then I experienced a miscarriage right before getting pregnant with my third child. I experienced a miscarriage. And then after that, my cousin and I, we were both pregnant at the same time. And she had actually delivered twin babies who eventually died not too long after birth. And we were experiencing and going through that loss too. And then I end up losing my uncle that next year, very early on in that next year. And I was going through a lot of grief and I didn't even know it. And I wasn't handling it properly. But, I know people can probably say, well, how do you handle grief properly? So anyway, let's define what grief is. So grief is defined as deep sorrow or anguished, and it's something that you experience after significant loss, and it's usually, or especially, the death of a loved one is when most people experience grief. But there are so many other types of losses that can make you experience grief. And the death of a family member or a loved one is very high on that list, right? It's very high on that list, but there are so many others. Now, one of the other reasons why I decided to do this particular video is because, guys, I mean, right now it's 2023, and we have gone through and still is going through and suffering the little last little bits and pieces of this pandemic that has caused so much loss, right? This pandemic that we went through caused so much loss, whether it's the loss of a loved one or the loss of a job or I mean, so many things, the loss of a lifestyle, the loss of relationships. We have seen a lot of that play out. And I think a lot of us, even now, are grieving. We're grieving the loss of what our lives looked like even before the pandemic. And so I was just like, I think a lot of us are still experiencing this grief. And so some of the types of losses that can cause you to experience grief, I'm just going to give you a short list of it, right? Of them. And one of them is the death of a family member or friend. Of course, that's very high on that list. Another, the death of a pet. And honestly, I don't have a pet, but I have pets that are close to me, that are pets of family members that I can't even imagine, like, now that we have them in our lives, like, life without them. A miscarriage, a loss of health, or being diagnosed with something, that may or may not have a cure, but just, or not being able to do something that you used to be able to do. A divorce or a breakup, a job loss, life transitions such as like moving or graduating, like moving across country. I don't know, even if it's for something that's good, it's something different, graduating, like I said before, or retiring can cause some type of grief because your life was one way before and now it's changed, and you may not know what that looks like, or, trying to navigate through what that is, and also trauma. Again, I've mentioned, there are certain things, so many types of traumas that can happen in someone's life, but something that we've gone through on a global level was this pandemic. And, the wars that have been erupting, whether they've been something civil or even something even bigger, it can be a lot. But so those are some types of losses. And now let's go into some symptoms of grief. And some of those symptoms can include depression, anger, crying, fatigue, insomnia, nausea, weight fluctuations, muscle tension and pain, guilt, regret, and doubt. So those are some symptoms that can very much give you an idea that you may be grieving, going through something that you may even need to reach out for help for. So after, I'm going to tell you this real quick. When I was going through postpartum depression and anxiety, and the doctor pretty much, she diagnosed me with postpartum depression and anxiety, and she was saying, she was trying to prescribe me pain meds because I was constantly having pain in my neck and in my, and tension in my neck. And she was just like, well, these muscle relaxers will help you. And I was just like, nope. I said, no, no, thank you. I'll deal with the Tylenol. or whatever, if it gets to that point. And then I was having really bad headaches and stuff. And so when I tell you, like, this stuff is, this stuff is true. All these symptoms and that stuff is true. But anyway, let's continue on, and we're going to go through very quickly the 5 stages of grief. So the 5 stages of grief include denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Now, denial is, some people may say that they're numb or whatever, they're feeling numb, and or they don't know what to feel, or they're not accepting what's going on. Anger is rage, outbursts, extreme sadness, or isolation. Bargaining is, you start making deals with yourself or with God, or, you're thinking about things in the past and asking, well, what if questions? Or what if I just had done this? Could things have turned out differently? Or depression, sadness and longing and having that intense pain. And acceptance, for sometimes or gradually, you'll find that the pain start to ease, and you accept what has happened, and you can learn to live again. And a lot of people do that, definitely with God's help. Everybody does that with God's help. But people don't necessarily go through these 5 stages in order, or even experience each stage at the same amount of time, or even experience each stage at all. But, I just wanted to bring this to you so that you can, and hopefully it'll help you in some kind of way. So come back to me for part 2, and we'll continue this conversation. Okay, talk to you later. Bye-bye.